This first class is going to be pulling from what you know. Once again, I'm Addie Schaefer Benko, the owner of Creative Stages. And so, one of the first things that I want you to think about is pull from your own memory, your own life experiences. Oftentimes, as a young performer, you can't relate to some of these roles that have been through extreme circumstances unless you can pull something that's a similar emotion in your life. So, for example, think about the most shocking moment in your life. Maybe it was the first time you found out you got cast in something. Maybe a friend let you down, but you want to pull that into your audition piece. You want to make this personal to you. So, if the character in the given piece that you're representing is going through a really shocked moment, or the character arc of the role that you're going out for has gone through an extreme circumstance, you have to think of that thing in your life. Journaling is going to be a big part of this. So I would get a notebook or a piece of paper or something out now, or make a note in your phone. Start listing some of the most extreme, shocking, both in a good and a bad way, things that have happened in your life. This can be your private actor's journal, essentially, that you can continue to look back on and pull from, but you're going to want to write these down. You're going to want to try and remember as much of it as possible, whether it's a really difficult time that you had to pull through something that a character would much likely relate to. Um, you're going to need to think of your own way to pull this into the piece. Another thing to consider is that any emotion that a character is going through, it might take you a different journey to get to that emotion. So maybe the sadness of a child dying, something is not, you can't relate to that as a high schooler or a young performer. So you're going to want to pull from something like a pet that has passed or a friend that's betrayed you that got you to that same extreme emotion in your life. At a younger age, things can seem a lot bigger than they are, as is when you have everyday drama in school, it feels like an end all be all because you haven't gone through a lot of experiences to teach you what is on the other side. So every big moment might seem small to an adult, but it is big to you. So you should be pulling from that for an audition. Another thing is to think of rush of adrenaline. You want to elevate everything. You want to add a sense of urgency so that you bring a lot of energy to the audition. You might not need to use the same context of the actual show when you're looking at an audition piece. You want to bring something that is high energy, not necessarily extreme crazy, but something that you can bring a lot to. So if there is a piece of a song or a piece of a monologue and the character doesn't grow much, you want to add some growth to show them what you can do. This is one of those very few instances where you can kind of pull from other elements and kind of make this scene your own so that you can just show off a little bit more. So then let's talk about where to pull inspiration from, for example. One thing that you might want to think about is just studying people. Start going to parks and public places and malls and look for exceptional people. You're going to be playing characters with exceptional stories. So you want to bring in a diverse array of people you can pull from. And again, bring out that journal. Even if you're not a big writer, just bullet points. Think of people that stand out when you see them. The more that you're in public places, the more exposure you're going to have to diverse stories and people. Now, you have to be careful because you also have to see how the world sees you, and you have to think of the demographics that you can fall into. So be careful not to portray stories that are too far from you just because you find them interesting. We're going to talk about this more in class 2, but you definitely want to look at pieces and stories that are close to your life experiences. I use that phrase a lot when I'm giving audition feedback. If I find that a student has picked something that's way too mature for them or not mature enough, I try to say, stick to something that's closer to your life experiences. Another thing is just to watch shows, watch plays live and online, watch other stories, see how they're depicted in shows. There's just an element of storytelling that's different in a written piece than in real life sometimes, or in different styles of theater. Look at the way that people converse and some of their language and dialogue, especially if you're going after like a period piece, meaning a show from a very specific time or place. You might want to study that place a little bit. I'm not saying you have to do a whole dissertation or a whole research project, but you definitely want to dive into the world of those shows a little bit more and watch more than one version. If it's a recent show and there's only one version available, try to see if you can find anything. Social media is your friend at this point. There are probably TikToks or Reels or just short clips of other characters playing a certain role. Even something like Hadestown or Back to the Future, that's a little more recent. You can still find multiple characters playing that role. And I give this advice because if you're just pulling from one character, you're going to start mirroring and mimicking them. You just can't help it. So, really try to find a diverse perspective so you can add your own twist. If you listen to the same thing over and over again, it's hard to get it out of your head. For example, if you just did a show, if you just did Grease, and you're singing a solo song from that show, you are going to likely do it very similar to how you were directed. So you want to pick something that's close in your life experiences or that you can relate to and find things to pull from your life to relate to it, but not over coached, over rehearsed that you can't do it more than one way. Because the chances are you could walk into that room and they see a spark in you, but they may ask you to do a redirect. And if you can't think outside of that context, you're going to struggle. Use your world before others, though. Think about your life. You have a story, even if you feel like you've just stared at a wall for the last 15 to 20 years of your life. There's something about that wall you can pull from. There's always something that you can pull from your life before you try to adopt someone else's story. You're the expert of what you know best, right? So if you played a sport, if you do a certain other activity, pull from that. Use that as a relation to what you're telling. If your character goes through a sense of rejection, maybe it's when you got rejected from the varsity tennis team when you went out for it, or you went out for student government and you didn't get the position that you wanted. But think of things that you can use and you can pull from. So I would take a moment now and think of a song or a monologue, something that you're already working on for an audition. Think about the character's story. Where do they start? What is their emotion? Where are they in place? What is their goal? Start writing these things out and literally make a map of your character's story. So, for example, if you're singing Dead Mom from Beetlejuice, maybe you're only singing the end and you start around verse 2. This character is looking for an answer. She's not just singing to herself. She's reaching out to her mom, quite literally, who is now beyond and in the grave. So she is searching. She is questioning. She's confused. She's got a lot of mixed emotions. So then you need to think of a time where you've had a lot of mixed emotions that you can pull into this scene. Maybe you can't relate to the dead mom aspect, or maybe you can, but maybe you had different feelings at that time. You need to pull from what you know that is relatable to the character. So then as the character goes on, thinking about her arc, the next thing that the character might do or the character might experience is all of a sudden she has an epiphany, right? And by the end of the song, she's basically saying, I'm going to move on. Dad has not. Dad didn't lose a mom. Dad is making me want to jump ahead, but I'm not ready for that. I need a sign, right? So she's asking for this sign. She's asking for this way to be shown so that she can move on, but she's still trying to find answers. If you sing the song like you've already discovered the answer, that's not the essence of the character. So you have to write out the character journey, and then side by side, I would parallel with things along your journey that have been very similar in terms of mood and tone or emotion or what the character is looking for. The next thing you can do is think about all of the senses of what's going on, right? If we're sticking with the dead mom perspective, what does she smell? Well, where is she right now? Is she outside in the rain still? So is it that rain, dewy smell? Or has she jumped inside the older house that's semi haunted? So it kind of smells of maybe a little rust and there's cobwebs everywhere. But think about all senses. It's going to bring the piece to life. Then let's talk about sight. What does she see? Well, again, if we're outside in this dreary rain, she sees a lot of literal raindrops and things that are wilted. I don't know about you, but on a rainy day, sometimes I just start to drag. So she's dragging, right? If we're still in this rainy day perspective, she's dragging herself. So think about sight, think about smell, taste. What does she taste? Is she tasting the raindrops from outside? Has she just finished a bite of something from lunch? But what could she taste? This might seem like a silly exercise, but if you can go through all the senses, it's just going to bring this piece to life even more. If you don't believe in this world, the people on the other side of the audition table are not going to believe you either. So bring it to life and personalize it as much as you can. Here, right? Well, she could be hearing the rain. She could be hearing creaks in the floor if she's inside. She could be hearing a person pass by. Maybe at the moment, and this is something where you can create it a little bit personalized for you. Maybe at the moment that she says daddy's in denial, her dad has just walked past her in the room. So that's a sight thing. That is a hearing thing. She hears the footsteps. Maybe she smells his cologne and it triggers something. She's upset with him. There's a sentiment that she has that smell, that sound, that vision is going to trigger. Okay, so then feel. What does she feel? And I don't mean emotional feel, but literally feeling, texture, tactiles. Maybe it's her own dress. There's a moment that she's just pulling on her own black lacy dress, right? Um, Maybe again, we go back to the raindrops. The raindrops is something that's so relatable. All of us have been somehow in rain, so we can pull easily from that. Is there a moment where she's just standing in the rain, right? Daddy is in denial. Daddy doesn't feel, he wants me to smile and clap like a performing seal. How can I do that in this rainy day, right? So just think of the character arc and think of all of those senses that you can pull from. And again, write it all out. You can have the idea in your head, but until you write it out, it's just another form of sensory and putting it into memory and reminding you. Um, Maybe it's in the journal, maybe you print out the lyrics, but you somehow have a way of looking at your text and dissecting it. Another thing you can do is play something that I've always really enjoyed doing. It fits almost any circumstance. It's called Imaginative Journey. It's really helpful to do this in groups, but if you wanted to do it yourself, maybe you make a voice memo of some narration that's somewhat relatable or realistic to this world, but you kind of give your own twist. So, if again, we're going back to the dead mom situation, I sit here and maybe the narration is okay, you're walking outside. You are now standing in the rain, and it's just a light drizzle to start. Then the drizzle starts to increase and grow and grow. And you create this narration, you record that, and then you would listen back to the recording and act on impulse, right? In character. What would the character do if it went from a drizzle to a pouring rain? Would the character freak out? Would the character get excited? Is Lydia excited about being in pouring rain, or was she razzled this mist, or rather this misty drizzle that's mysterious and moody like she is, and the pouring rain just reminds her of how miserable everything is, right? You can start to pull in some of these things and practice and see what works. The other thing is just watching yourself. Find a way, whether it's recording, and it doesn't have to be formal, like a self tape, as if you're submitting for your audition today, but watch yourself back. Have a friend watch you. Have them see you try a lot of different things and see what works. Mirroring. Mirroring is another great example. You want to sit and mirror what's going on. This can be with a friend, this can be with someone who it could be with yourself, like looking in the mirror and just mirroring what's going on. Uh, it could be your friend is standing across from you and starts to do something interesting in the life of the character, and then you make a new discovery. Just be aware that you're not mimicking another person too much. And again, a lot of this is exploratory. So, this first class is really a time for you to pause, try, explore, try some different techniques, but you want to write out things that are similar to you, things that you can pull from for your story, things that give you an example of that character in another circumstance so that you can see what works and use that in a future audition or use that in this character arc that you're building. Not always does a piece give you that full character arc that you need, and you want to show them that you can pull on extreme emotions and circumstances all in that short 1 minute that you have to audition. So, this is the time to really pause and play and think about that one piece that you're working on. And if you are still at the place where you're thinking, I don't have an audition piece yet, just think of a song, just think of a monologue or a character, and just play with it for this first class. Take time to pause right now and start reflecting with the piece, with the story that you have to tell. What are some things you can pull from in your own life? What are the senses of the world that you're trying to bring to life? And what are some ways that you can practice, whether it's playing imaginative journey? Again, if you only have yourself at home as you're doing this, or maybe you're watching with a friend, or maybe you're doing this in a classroom, you've got people to pull from. And you can have a teacher narrate for you. If you don't have that experience and you just have yourself, pre-record something on your phone in notes, in voice recorder, in whatever you use, and then play it back, and then just act on impulse. Or maybe even find a recording online that's just walking you through a journey of someone that you can just improvise. And then find a way to capture yourself doing this so you can watch it back and say, oh, I really liked that. If you don't take practice to watch yourself and really learn from how you look, it's going to be hard to know how you're coming across to the auditioners on the other side of that table. So, really take that into practice by watching yourself. Really go back, review, and watch. So, take time right now and just pause in this class. Take that piece, take that character arc, and again, write down what is the character experiencing? What are similar experiences from an emotional standpoint, from a tactic standpoint? Have you been in a place where you're searching for answers? And when was it? Write all of that down and then the senses of the world. And then proceed on to the next part of this class. Okay, so let's go ahead and break this down with an example. So I'm going to take Sally's You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown monologue and break it down for you. I went ahead and just made something that you are welcome to use, or you can use your own way. My brain likes to organize in boxes and take notes. I might even color code, I might write it out. But this is something hopefully you can just use and start breaking down whatever story with some of the notes that we talked about. So I already took the text, and I'll scroll down as a little bit of a spoiler. I took the full text and I broke it up into beats, right? And so if you don't know what a beat is a moment, a shift, a change. A beat is when there feels like there's a natural change in motivation or what's going on. It may even be a natural pause. So if I did no homework at all and I'm just reading this, I naturally start to wonder what's happening next, or realize that the character is going through a moment of growth or change or a new perspective. For example, I'll just go ahead and read this. A C? I got a C in my coat hanger sculpture? How could anyone get a C in coat hanger sculpture? Pause. Right? I haven't done a lot of homework to think about this, but I'm just naturally thinking of how it reads. Maybe I have heard a character pause there before when I listened to it. I'm going to now keep going. May I ask a question? Was I judged on the piece of sculpture itself? If so, is it not true that time alone can judge a work of art? Or another pause and B. So before we could kind of dive in specifically, I'm going to go through the beats now and think about what's happening. So sometimes tactics are hard to figure out. Here, the punctuation tells you a lot. There are question marks, question marks, question marks. I think the original emotion is somewhat of shock. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my notes in blue. We're going to say shocked, right? That's the starting emotion. We could change this later on, but it just gives us a placeholder. Also, there are no wrong answers as long as you're making choices and making them informed and strong. Again, this is the one time where you can take what's happening in a story and kind of add your own flair and twist. Motive tactic. Well, for what we know about the piece, Sally is a student, and Sally is bringing her coat hanger sculpture back to her teacher. So asking teacher for clarity. Now, usually I won't get this specific, and this kind of gets to a goal. Usually it's just a word, and it's a verb word, something you can act upon. Asking. She's asking. Personal connection. Maybe you've doubted a grade before, right? So here we are. And again, I hope you're taking notes alongside me. I hope you're looking at your piece. I hope you are taking this and running with it yourself. So let's go to senses. What does she smell? Well, she's in a classroom, right? So I'm going to make these orange. Let's say she smells bleach. The teacher just cleaned all the tables with Clorox wipes. Some kind of bleach or cleaner smell. Taste. Maybe it's in the air. Maybe there's a scent in the classroom. It could be that, I mean, there's not a natural taste here, but let's just say it can be related to smell, that she's just got this like cleaner taste in her mouth, right? I'm gonna try and keep up with the color coding. Okay, so then touch. She's got her coat hanger sculpture, right? That alone, she's probably carrying in her hand. Now, you do not have to carry it with you or have a prop or anything like that for an audition. In fact, I would say don't. But you might want to practice with it as you're figuring this out to kind of get the story to you. Maybe she hears the teacher talking before she enters the room. Maybe they're getting off of a phone call, maybe they ended something. And then C, she sees the project and teacher, right? And that's the context of this. Look at my project. I think it's amazing. How could I get a C? And the teacher, and looking for the teacher's response, right? Sometimes this stays the same throughout, okay? But other times it can shift. And this one, it's a little straightforward, but maybe there's something in here that we can add, that kind of urgency, that elevatedness that can shift the arc of this piece. So then we get to more questions. May I ask a question? Well, clearly she's already questioning, right? But she's asking. She just kind of inserts herself. Now she's trying to be polite, it seems. So, maybe the emotion is trying to relax herself, trying to calm down, calming self, right? I feel like she comes in very elevated and then realizes, oh, I'm talking to my teacher. Okay, so this could be more of questioning, inquiring, something that's a little more formal now that she realizes, oh, I'm talking to my teacher. That's right. Personal connection. Um, talking to someone with authority. This could be a parent, right? Maybe you question something that a parent or a guardian said, and then you realize, oh, that was a bit too much. Now we go to senses. Okay, so if we're listening, may I ask a question? Was I judged on the piece of the sculpture itself? If so, is it not true that time alone can judge a work of art? I find this kind of a funny moment because Sally's trying to pull from anything and is basically saying, can you just sit back and think if you're at an art gallery? So maybe we just pull in some art gallery senses, right? Again, this doesn't have to be a final thing, but just to give you an idea. So what would you smell at an art gallery? Well, you might smell like clay, paint, right? You've got multimedia happening here. Taste, same thing. Maybe there's an interactive art exhibit. You wouldn't be tasting much. Maybe you've got a mint in your mouth. I don't know. Again, taste is kind of a hard one, but just to kind of think about all the senses. Touch, most of them you can't touch. So maybe your own hand as you kind of like stand back and you're admiring an art gallery and your hands are together, showing this kind of sense of respect and formality. And she could take that same stance when talking to her teacher. So there's almost this fantasy that we're building while talking. Like, can you imagine, teacher, just for a moment, when you're in an art gallery, isn't it true that, time alone can judge a work of art, that you sit and you notice new things? So here, sound, maybe, the critique of another artist, giving like good feedback of like, wow, what an amazing piece, right? So she's painting this world, kind of having the teacher dive in, other art that we kind of take ourselves out of the reality for a second and daydream a little bit and have the teacher buy along with it. And again, I say this all the time. If we keep talking, are we getting what we want? Not usually. Once we get what we want, we usually stop talking or move to something else. So Sally's not getting what she wants. So now she's questioning in a new way. Or was I judged on my talent? If so, is it fair that I be judged on part of my life over which I have no control? So now she's saying, I have no talents. And I think this is her trying to gain sympathy. So I'm going to say to gain sympathy here for the tactic. And then for the emotion, it's kind of this dramatic, um, what do we want to call this? Like a dramatic, I'm not sadness, but dramatic flair, I guess. Um, guilt, not guilt, like self-loathing a little bit. Yeah, I think that could make sense. So again, like it really makes you stop and reflect using something like this to really understand the piece and what you're trying to do. Personal connection, maybe I was over dramatic, telling a story to a friend because I really wanted them to be interested, right? And that's not the same as talking to his teacher, but it's the same idea of like, let me go over the top. All right, so I think we're back in the classroom here. Again, in a normal situation, I might spell this out and give some other options, but I'm going to dive us back into the classroom. Nothing really new. Was I judged on what I had learned about the project? If so, then we're not you, my teacher, also being judged on your ability. So there's almost a blaming here. This could be two different beats. It could be a quick passing moment and continue this whole same scenario. So now, are you willing to share my seat? Judge, to judge, right? There's a little bit of anger or scorn. Are you willing to take responsibility? Right? That she's kind of blaming, right? There's my verb, my actionable verb, blame. Are you willing to accept my seat? Perhaps I was being judged on the quality of the coat hanger itself, out of which my creation was made. Now, is that not also unfair? Like, this is all on you. Placing blame, on a sibling during a fight instead of being able to own up. Yeah, so that could be an example. Again, I'm just kind of walking through, and this is where I might pause and play a little bit so you could pause and start to practice. Smell, maybe there's a new smell that we notice in the classroom. Maybe she's got an apple on her desk. Maybe you're even so bold to take a bite of it. I don't know. Again, these are things to play with. I wouldn't necessarily say do this, but you can play around with some of this to build extremes. I mean, how extreme is that to go from this dramatic, feel bad for me, to then how dare you and take a bite of her apple? And you went from this like solemn, I'm sorry, I need to be reverent, to I'm now accusing you. Touch, we're going back to the coat hanger sculpture. Maybe it's her desk. Let's say we touch the desk, like there's a pounding on the desk. Play around with it. You can always change it. Here, the sound of the bite or the desk pound, right? All of a sudden, these sounds can make us react. Or there could be someone in the hallway that makes us go, ooh, I should be careful what I say. All of these atmospheric things are really important to think about. See teacher's response, right? We're looking to see how the teacher is reacting. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of this. So I would fill the rest of these out and then I would practice and practice and practice, right? I'm not going to fill the rest of these because it's taking a long time. But if we go back, am I to be judged by the quality of coat hangers that are being used by the dry cleaning establishment that returns our garments? All of a sudden, she's again placing blame in a new way. So maybe it's not your fault, teacher, but I'm going to place blame somewhere else and distract you and give you a reason to make you doubt this seat, right? So placing doubt. It might be the emotion is going from anger to convince or to, startle. And then here to place doubt to convince. Personal connection, you can find one. Is that not the responsibility of my parents? This is like the last ditch effort. Now, I split up these two. Some people would put them together. It's how you present it. I'm kind of building an arc. So we're building this arc from, excuse me, questioning, hello. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to be a little more refined and come back. But listen, hey, by the way, da 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 da, blame, 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 reach this arc. We're building a climax, right? Building to this point. And then where do we want to end? Okay. So is that not the responsibility of my parents? Because guess who she's going to call in next if she's not doing well in the class? The parents, right? So parent conference is coming up. Blame the parents, don't blame me. Give me the better grade. Or when you talk to them, blame them. So how would we want to end? We'd want to end on a bold note. If we started in this meek character, we might want to end with strength. Like, this is what I think, and you should blame them, right? Some strength and courage there, because it would take a lot of courage to stand up to a teacher like this. If this is the arc that we're creating, it might be that you start practicing it a couple times and you realize this is not for me, and that's totally okay. I want you to journal, take some time for this reflection period after this class, 5 character traits of a character or of multiple characters, and then 5 connections you have to them. You might even start breaking down beats for a piece, but hold off because I'm going to help you in the next class come up with choices and picking pieces and all of that. So, see you in the next class.